Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled The Year An Undefeated Team Got Left Out and Nobody Talks About It. By the end of the 1999 season, three teams were perfect. No losses, no excuses, no debate. Or at least that's what everyone thought. Because in this alternate history of college football, one of those teams doesn't just get overlooked, they get completely shut out. No title spot, no second chance, nothing. And if you think that sounds impossible, you may be thinking to yourself that the BCS was broken. But in this universe, the BCS doesn't just fail, it immediately leaves an undefeated team behind. But first, we need to set the table for what changed. This is an alternate history of college football, but it starts with something small, a coaching ripple in the late 1980s. Instead of staying rooted in the Southeast, the influence of Howard Schnellenberger quietly spreads west into the DNA of UCLA football, not directly, but through assistance, philosophy, and recruiting pipelines. That one adjustment changes everything because now UCLA isn't just a West Coast finesse team, they become something else entirely physical, pro style, NFL driven. And over the next decade, they rise. By the early 1990s, UCLA isn't just good, they're consistent. Top 10 finishes, pipeline of NFL quarterbacks, and a system that feels ahead of its time. UCLA becomes the West Coast program that figured it out first. Meanwhile, across town, USC slips just enough to create something dangerous. A power vacuum in Los Angeles filled by UCLA. And that sets the table for the South stumbling. Because at the same time, something subtle is happening in the Southeast. Steve Spurrier still brings innovation to Florida football. The offense is still exciting, the swagger is still there, and Danny Warfield still becomes one of the most efficient quarterbacks of the era. But something is missing. Recruiting pipelines adjust, margins shrink, and when the biggest moments come, Florida doesn't quite break through. Not because they weren't good enough, but because the sport itself is changing around them. And this sets the table for Oklahoma's missed moment. Because out on the plains, another change happens. The post Barry Switzer era at Oklahoma drags longer than expected. They don't collapse, but they don't rise back to prominence either. And the most important moment, they miss out on a hire, a defensive mind who would bring back Oklahoma in real life, but go on to change college football elsewhere in this alternate timeline, Bob Stoops. Instead of heading to Norman, he heads east to a program nobody's paying attention to, and that sets the table for the unlikely build. Rutgers. In the mid 90s, that name meant absolutely nothing in the national conversation. But it did have one thing untapped talent, New Jersey, Northeast recruiting, overlooked players. And under Bob Stoops, things start to click. 1996 is a quiet improvement. 1997, a defensive identity starts to establish. 1998, something real's emerging. By 1999, they're no longer a surprise. They're a problem. A defense that doesn't bend. A team that doesn't make mistakes. The kind of team absolutely nobody wants to play. And this all sets the stage for the 1999 collision. By the end of the 99 season, three teams stand undefeated. UCLA in the West, Rutgers in the East, and Nebraska rises out of the chaos in the Midwest. Three perfect teams, and one more just behind them, a one-loss Florida team that passes the eye test, but passes the computer metrics and climbs in the rankings. And that sets the table for the decision. The final BCS standings have Nebraska at number 1, UCLA at number 2, Florida at number 3, and Rutgers at number 4. Rutgers is out, undefeated and out. And you may be thinking to yourself that this couldn't happen, that an undefeated team would never be left behind. But at the time, the system wasn't built for fairness. It was built for selection. And Rutgers, they didn't have the brand, they didn't have the history, so they don't get a chance. And that sets the table for the title game, Nebraska versus UCLA, old power versus new power. And in a tight physical game, Nebraska wins. The title stays with tradition, but the story doesn't end there. And that sets the table for the aftermath. Rutgers finishes undefeated, and the debate increases. Poll voters are split. Fans argue, and even early in the BCS, people are seriously questioning whether the system itself is broken. Not just flawed, but flat out broken. Because this wasn't just about one team, it was about a moment where college football had to decide what matters more, history or results. And in this alternate history of college football, they made their choice. They chose history and left perfection behind. Now, if you enjoyed this college football alternate history and you want to see more scenarios like this, hit like, drop your thought in the comments, and subscribe. Because this alternate history, there's a lot more like them, and trust me, they're only getting crazier from here. And I will see you in the next timeline.